Okay, here are the Ballantine paperbacks of Tarzan of the Apes that I owned when I was maybe 14 years old. And these are the first, this is the first time I read Tarzan. I was a little bit late in getting to Tarzan, but as soon as I started reading them, I loved them. And what we're going to be getting to in a few minutes is a famous literary conundrum called the Korak time paradox. And I'm going to explain what that means by going through my experience in reading Tarzan for the first time. So I read Tarzan of the Apes, and I love it. It's a great book. And I know that it was written in 1912. And also, there's um, stuff in the novel, a letter that Jane writes at one point that she dates, that demonstrates it's set about the time that the book was written. I think Jane's letter says like 1909, and so bingo, that's when Tarzan took place. And I was enough of a geek even then to love the idea of chronologies and continuity. So I started keeping track of this. And we get to the return of Tarzan, and shenanigans go on before Tarzan and Jane finally just hook up and get married. They get married at the end of this book, and it's not exact about how much time has gone by, but let's say it's 1913 or so by the time um, they're married. And this makes sense. The Beast of Tarzan, they now have a little baby. And when Jane and the baby are kidnapped and taken to Africa, the book is basically a chase scene, extended chase scene with Tarzan going after the bad guys who have captured his wife and baby. So, once again, this is all very reasonable. Now, I don't remember whether or not I was looking at copyright dates. The original copyright dates are in there. It's 1914. So Tarzan's kid is born in 1914. And I assume that I didn't bother looking at the copyright dates on the title page here because of the assumptions I started to make with the next book. Because the next book is The Son of Tarzan. And this one jumps ahead like 10, 11 years because by now their son, John Clayton Jr., is a young man. He's like 10, 11 years old. Um, and shenanigans happen, and he ends up in the jungle with his parents thinking he's dead, and he learns to be Korak the killer, and survive in the jungle and develop skills equivalent to those his father had. And then, just before reconnecting with Tarzan and Jane, they find out he's alive. He rescues a woman from like an Arab slave trader, and they fall in love, and they're going to get married. So you have to assume he's probably 18 by now. So that last book, Beast of Tarzan, was 1914. So okay, he's born in 1914. So 18 years have gone by. So now it's at least 1932. So the Tarzan saga has jumped ahead and taken us to the early 30s in my mind. As I said, I probably made the silly mistake of not looking at the copyright dates when I was doing all of this. Here's the next one, Tarzan, the Jewels of Opar. In this adventure, Tarzan goes to the lost city of Opar to raid its gold vaults because he's found out that his family fortune has been wiped out. He's gone broke. I thought, since Korak's not mentioned, um, my idea was that this was a little bit of a flashback story. It doesn't explicitly say this. This is just what I was assuming to fit things into the chronology in my head. And so when he goes broke, I'm thinking, oh, okay, this is probably set in 1929, and the stock market crash is what left, in the start of the depression is what wiped out his fortune. Hey, this makes sense. Once again, as a 14-year-old, or 13-year-old, whatever I was, I obviously was not taking the just standard idea of checking the copyright date. Because as you can see, this was originally copyrighted in 1916. There's no presumption that Burroughs was a Nostradamus and was predicting the Depression. That was just my assumption of where the book must be set based on the time that had passed in Sons of Tarzan. Book 6, The Jungle Tales of Tarzan, is a flashback to Tarzan's boyhood before he met any other white men and left the jungle for a time. So it's set between two specific chapters of Tarzan of the Apes. It's a set of short stories, very entertaining short stories, about young Tarzan having adventures in the jungle. So don't have to worry about this in terms of chronology. Now, here's where it starts to get strange, at least in my mind, as a 13-year-old. Tarzan the Untamed is set during World War I. So it begins in the year 1914. It's set in Africa, and their estate in Africa, the Greystoke estate in Africa, is destroyed by Germans. And for most of the novel, Tarzan thinks Jane has been killed. And the novel is him going on a roaring rampage of revenge against Germans. And it's awesome. It really is. But is this a flashback? Is this before or after their son was born? I'm a little bit confused on this because up till the point the son was born and the first 10 years of their son's life, they were living in London. Jane was saying, no more of this jungle stuff. I'm tired of getting kidnapped by gorillas. We're staying in the city. And Tarzan went along with that to keep her happy. So here they're living in Africa. But it's 1914. It's way back early in their marriage. That's the only way you can explain it. And just what's going on. I have no idea what's going on with this in terms of time, the flow of time. I think I probably decided it must be a flashback of some sort. You know, maybe they lived for a little bit of time in Africa before heading back to London after doing the World War One stuff. You know, but I'm not sure what the chronology is now. Tarzan the Untamed leads directly into Tarzan the Terrible, which is an absolutely wonderful adventure novel. This is one of my favorites of the series. But he is still chasing the Germans who kidnapped Jane in the previous book. And he gets into this lost land where there's still dinosaurs. He gets involved in revolts and civil wars amongst the people that live there. Excuse me. And he finally rescues Jane. And now here comes the Korak time paradox that just can't be explained. And I didn't discover this as a 13-year-old and 14-year-old. This is very famous amongst fans. This is just where I realized it existed. Because this was before the internet, you know, so you couldn't look things up. And I had no idea that the Korak time paradox was already a known thing. So this is set during World War I, so 1914 to 1918. And Tarzan specifically tells Jane that Korak was fighting in France with the British Army, and that last he heard he was fine. And then also, Korak shows up at the end, having followed his father's trail into this lost land to use a few well-placed sniper shots to rescue Tarzan and Jane right at the end. And it's a great ending. But wait a minute, Korak is an adult in what can't be later than 1918. How is that even possible? He couldn't have been born before 1914, or maybe 1913 is the best stretch you could do. He's kindergarten aged. How did he grow up in the jungle and have all these adventures and become an adult and still have it be only 1918? Now, obviously, when Burroughs wrote The Son of Tarzan, he wasn't worried about continuity, and he didn't have to be. He was just telling great adventure stories. He didn't know there would be nerdy fans out there who tried to keep track of these things. And I do want to say here, of course, that there are nerdy fans who don't care about this sort of continuity at all, and they are just as loyal fans of Edgar Rice Burroughs' fictions as those of us who enjoy talking about continuity. They just enjoy the stories themselves and don't worry about that other stuff. But there are those of us who, part of our way of appreciating the Burroughs' work is having fun debating things like this. So some people have suggested you push Tarzan of the Apes back 20 years, and then everything more or less fits. There is a detail in Tarzan of the Apes you have to ignore, in that Tarzan actually, when he travels to Wisconsin, I think it was, to try and find Jane after leaving the jungle, he's actually driving a car. And he wouldn't have been doing that 20 years earlier, because cars would have been a relatively new thing at the time. So How did he end up to be an adult in the 19 teens? Burroughs obviously just didn't worry about it. And once again, he wasn't obligated to worry about it. Um, but for those of us who like continuity, the Korak time paradox is an eternally debatable subject. Now, the Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated is currently publishing a trilogy of novels about Korak, where they're going to come up with a explanation for the Korak time paradox that I guess will be official because these books are authorized by the estate and are considered part of canon. Um, so there you go. The paradox is apparently soon going to be solved. But as a teenager, I slammed up against this. It's like, no, I was keeping track. This has to be the 1930s. You can do a World War I story as a flashback, but you can't have Korak. He wouldn't have been old enough. And of course, I kept reading the novels anyway because they're great novels, and I've read everything Burroughs has written, I believe. If I've missed a few, I will eventually get to it and read them anyway. But there we go. There's Korak. How the heck did you grow up, you little snot? You should have been only 5 years old during World War One. But what can you do? So anyway, those are my Tarzan novels. Kind of cool that I still own the paperbacks that I had as a kid. That's always really nice. And that's my first experience with the Korak time paradox. New readers nowadays are very fortunate in that they can go to the internet and look up and find out these things exist and find out theories about how to explain it. Me, I was on my own as a 14-year-old. It was very, very lonely, but I survived it anyway. So thank you, everybody, for listening.